Can you take CJC-1295 by itself? Look, one peptide works, two peptides, completely different instrument. I mean, I look at peptides as a band. Like, yeah, when you've got like a drummer, you can hear the drums for a while, but then a guitarist comes in, music gets a little better, then you got the lead singer, and then you got someone playing the violin or the cello or whatever musical instruments you like, but that's what peptide stacking is all about. And so many of you have heard that with CJC-1295, you probably see Ipamorelin in your blend. This is what we call the performance blend, and you're probably wondering, do I actually need both? And that's a great question that we're going to answer today, give you some of the data and the science around it. But the most important thing is to work with a licensed medical prescriber who can get you CJC-1295 or Ipamorelin from a licensed 503A compounding pharmacy. Now, CJC has been on the Category 2 list. It is being considered and moving back to Category 1. And so for those of you who are excited about that, want to talk to one of our medical providers at Ageless Future, just go to agelessfuture.com and we'll help you find the right peptide protocols that are from 503A compounding pharmacies. So let's jump in. I get the question, Reagan, do I have to use Ipamorelin and CJC? And let's talk about pairing these together, because when you run CJC alone, it does impact the shape of the growth hormone release. Remember, these peptides are metabolized very quickly. They need to be used in a fasted state, and you're just getting a little pulse of the CJC. And your body loves growth hormone because it helps us recover. It helps us get deep sleep. Your joints feel great. If you didn't have growth hormone, your muscles would literally fall off your body. But here's where people go wrong. They see that CJC-1295, it increases growth hormone. And then they look at Ipamorelin, they say it also increases growth hormone. And then they say, man, maybe I'll just pick one because I'm just going to simplify the protocol. Maybe it's Costco. I don't know. But Ipamorelin, maybe it got harder to source. But one thing that you want to look at is it's not just how much growth hormone is released, the fact that it's releasing it in pulses. And one thing that we found is that there are roughly 6 to 12 growth hormone pulses per day in a healthy adult. And so the largest pulse occurs during that slow wake sleep, that delta sleep, when you're just deep in your dream state. You're just in there before your dream state. You come out of that and you go into REM. But these pulses are not a quirk of biology. It's a feature. The downstream signaling of growth hormone, including IGF-1 production, fat oxidation, tissue repair, it all depends on the pattern of the release, not just the quantity. So CJC alone, it gives you the quantity, but without Ipamorelin, you're missing the pattern. And so let's break down what each of these peptides do on the receptor level. So CJC is a modified growth hormone releasing hormone analog. It binds to the growth hormone releasing hormone receptors in the pituitary, and it says, keep producing growth hormone. It's a very short pulse, maybe it's a short half-life, maybe about 30 minutes. And so it's not something that's going to just keep that signal primed over time, which is a good thing. You don't want it primed long-term. The result is you get this elevated level of growth hormone secretion. Think of it as raising the floor, raising your standards. Thank you, Ben Hardy, for the floor and focus and the frame. Starts with the frame, ends up with the floor, and then the focus. So Ipamorelin, though, it's a growth hormone releasing peptide, and it works on the different receptor pathways on the other side, on the ghrelin receptor. It doesn't just ask the pituitary to produce more growth hormone, it triggers an acute spike. In some cases, I've seen about a 7 times increase in raising that ceiling. And so according to the clinical cycling literature from Revolution Health, what you'll find is that CJC and Ipamorelin creates more of a synergistic dual release mechanism that more closely mimics the natural growth hormone pulse architecture your body evolved with. So you get the sustained elevation and peaks. So remember, you just raise the floor and you raise the ceiling, so you get a higher peak, and you don't get that same kind of hunger response if you're using CJC alone. Ipamorelin is a very selective growth hormone releasing peptide, and the evidence comes from its selectivity study. So this is important because not all growth hormone releasing peptides are created equal. Growth hormone releasing peptide 2 and GHRP6, for example, they trigger growth hormone pulses, and these are some of the early generations, but they also stimulate cortisol and prolactin release. Over time, if you have elevated cortisol from a growth hormone boost peptide, that directly undermines the benefits you're trying to achieve because cortisol, it can be catabolic. That's why you get that pulse in the morning and then it phases out. It's only present for a couple hours because it's repairing your body. But if it's there too long, it's going to start breaking down your tissues. Ipamorelin, it's uniquely selective. It triggers growth hormone release with a very minimal stimulation of cortisol and aldosterone or prolactin, and it makes it one of the cleanest growth hormone releasing peptides available. It's a very short amino acid chain, about half of the amino acid size of CJC. But with that selectivity is why pairing ipamorelin with CJC made it so standard, because you get this nice pulse and then it quiets down. You don't get the cortisol, you don't get the prolactin or aldosterone, so it doesn't really impact blood pressure from what we've seen. So yes, you can use CJC alone, but you may get a growth hormone elevation, but you'll still have kind of a flat sustained signal without the pulsatility. So it's like running an engine at a constant RPM versus just let's accelerate and boost it up and then decelerate when conditions demand. You got a corner coming up or slick roads or traffic. So the body responds differently to each one of these peptides. So from a longevity perspective, here's the decision you can think of. Think of your growth hormone axis as a symphony. CJC is like the baseline. It's like the steady, like that continual beat that keeps everybody moving, keeps the rhythm going. And it's the foundation. It provides the tonal floor that everything else sits on. Ipamorelin is like the melody. It's the part that creates the movement, the contrast, the tension, the emotional peak. And alone, the bass will tell you something. It holds the room. It's the structure. But without the melody, you're not experiencing the symphony. You're just experiencing a hum. So when you start pulsing these, when you get the growth hormone, it's released in waves. Rather than a constant drip, it's going to be a pulse, and then you're going to have this contrast of a high and then a low. It's the signal. And it's really important because every feedback system in your body, it's got this negative feedback loop and a positive feedback loop. But when you have good IGF-1 production, now the feedback loop is lipolysis. Let's break down fats. Let's improve collagen so that the joints are healthy. You can build muscle. These processes, they're all designed around this pulsatile input. And so CJC-1295, it's like trying to restore a full ecosystem by planting one species. It's like, if you take one probiotic strain, it might help, but more than likely, it's a drop in the bucket. It's not going to apply any kind of therapeutic benefits versus taking a broad spectrum. Or like we do is we work with a lab that does, fecal microbiota transplant, and it works phenomenally well for people who've had digestive issues, overuse antibiotics. So CJC and ipamorelin, it's really important because it restores that growth hormone axis and honors the way that it's designed to function. So how do you know if it's right for you? Well, you've got to look at your blood lab biomarkers. And so if your IGF-1 is already elevated, do not get on this peptide. There's no benefit for you of increasing that beyond about 250. The other thing you want to look at is make sure your blood sugar is stable. Because if your blood sugar, if your hemoglobin A1C, if it's above about a 5.4, 5.5, and then your insulin fasting is above a 5, you're going to have some issues in glucose ability. So you may have what's called dysglycemia, or you could have prediabetes. The other marker is cortisol. Look at cortisol. And you can look at your sodium-potassium ratios in your blood. Gives us a good signal as far as if CJC is right for you, or if we need to fix that cortisol pathway, and maybe epitalin or DSIP are going to be more important, or stacking the Wolverine stack, BPC 157 with TB500. Then look at your testosterone, not just total testosterone. That's more of a vanity metric. It's important, but look at your free testosterone. Look at what is bioavailable in your testosterone. So every single person that comes into our office, in order to get on peptides, to do it the right way, we run your blood labs. And each one of my medical providers at Ageless Future, they're trained in functional medicine. They'll be able to let you know exactly what peptides are going to benefit you the most. So you're not just injecting yourself with a hope and a prayer. You've actually got a scientific method behind this. Just go to agelessfuture.com, and my team will help you understand what is right for you. For those of you who love CJC, you want to go deeper on this, check out my video, Can I Take CJC-1295 Ipamorelin in the Morning? I'm Reagan Archibald. Can't wait to see you on the next video. Thanks for being part of the community.